The day I got fired, I was 5 minutes away from sealing the biggest deal of my career. 7 figures on the table, a client ready to sign, and years of trust behind it. Then the door opened. My boss walked in, not to congratulate me, but to end everything. Before we dive in, where are you listening from? And what time is it for you right now? Drop a comment below. I read everyone. I arrived early. My name's Adam Rowe. I'm 37, born and raised in Illinois, and I've spent most of my adult life in sales. Not the sleazy kind you see in movies, more like the grind-it-out, build-it-from-scratch kind. I'm not flashy. I don't drive a BMW or wear cufflinks. I'm a hard hat in a sea of suits. I show up early, stay late, and know how to talk to people in a way that feels real. That's always been my edge. People trust me. They know I'm not bullshitting them. I've sat at kitchen tables with clients in their 60s who still sign contracts with a handshake. I've built something out of nothing more than persistence, patience, and a knack for listening. That used to mean something. I thought it still did. For 9 years, I poured everything into the company. Early on, I was the guy doing cold calls at 6 a.m. and answering emails at midnight. I watched the office grow from a dozen desks to a glass tower downtown. I didn't mind the missed vacations, the canceled dinners, or the birthdays I spent on red-eye flights. It felt like I was building something that mattered. I hit my quotas. I beat them. I mentored junior reps, held the floor together when turnover spiked, and kept my clients loyal even when we screwed up. I wasn't gunning for a title. I just wanted to be the guy they could count on. And I was. Then he showed up. Charles Dane. Sharp suit, LinkedIn smile, the kind of guy who talks about synergy without irony. He came in as the new VP, full of jargon and big ideas, quoting books by people who never sold anything in their lives, said things like, "We need to scale culture," and "legacy mindsets need disruption." I didn't like him from the start, but I kept my head down. You can't out-talk a guy like Charles. You just outwork him. At least that's what I thought. The Henderson deal was mine from day one. A conservative logistics firm, family-owned, slow to trust. It took 11 months, 4 site visits, and a hell of a lot of late-night calls. But I got them there. A full $1 million per year, locked in for 3 years. We were on a final call to review contracts when I saw Charles pacing outside the glass wall, watching me like he already knew something I didn't. I ignored it, stayed focused. When the client said, "Adam, let's make it official," I felt like I'd crossed a finish line with a broken leg. I hit mute, stood up, heart pounding. That's when Charles stepped in, face tight. "Come with me," he said. HR was waiting. I didn't even get to finish the call. I followed him down the hallway like a man walking to his own execution. No one met my eyes. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that tells you people already knew before you did. We passed my old office. My nameplate still sat on the door. Inside, my mug was still half full of coffee, still warm. When we turned into the HR room, I knew there was no misunderstanding. No conversation. No context. Just a decision already made. The HR rep, Melissa, looked uncomfortable. She wouldn't make eye contact either. She slid a manila envelope across the table like she was passing a note in class. "This is your exit packet," she said, voice flat but rehearsed. "Your position has been eliminated due to restructuring." I opened my mouth, then closed it again. What do you even say to that? I looked at Charles. He didn't sit. Just stood near the door like a bouncer making sure I didn't cause a scene. "We appreciate your contributions," he said, and I swear he almost sounded bored. I scanned the packet. 1 month's severance, COBRA details, a bland recommendation letter full of team player nonsense. Nothing about the deal I just closed. Nothing about the millions I brought in. Nothing about the clients who texted me on weekends and called me when their own kids got married. All wiped away with one generic form and a signature line. 9 years, gone in less than 9 minutes. "Why now?" I asked. My voice cracked a little, more from disbelief than anger. "You couldn't wait until the deal was signed?" Charles didn't flinch. "We had to act quickly to align with fourth quarter restructuring. It's not personal." He said it like he was reading from a training manual. I laughed once, short, bitter. "You think the client's not going to notice I disappeared?" He gave a little shrug. "They're signed. It's done." That's when I realized. He didn't know. The deal hadn't been signed yet. The contract was sitting in the client's inbox, unsigned. I'd hit mute when they said, "Let's make it official," but I hadn't confirmed anything. And Henderson wasn't the kind of company to ignore a bait and switch. They trusted me, not some nameless replacement from a spreadsheet. I left the building with a cardboard box and a numbness I couldn't shake. I didn't go home right away, just sat in my car in the parking garage, staring at the steering wheel like it had the answers. My phone buzzed, 3 missed calls from Henderson's VP, plus a text. "Was that a joke? Where did you go?" That's when something shifted. I wasn't done. Not yet. I called Henderson back from the front seat of my car. No prep, no polish, just raw instinct and whatever scraps of composure I could pull together. It rang once before Frank picked up. He was their vice president of operations, old-school Texan, built like a linebacker and spoke like a man who didn't have time for bullshit. "Adam, what the hell's going on?" I could hear the confusion in his voice, and beneath it, a flicker of concern. The kind you only get when someone feels personally let down. "I wish I had a better answer," I said. "I was let go. 5 minutes after we wrapped the call. No warning, no explanation worth repeating." Silence. Then a low whistle. "You're joking." I wish I was. Charles Dane pulled me mid-call. HR said it's restructuring. But let's be honest, that timing wasn't an accident. Frank let out a slow breath. "That's about the dumbest move I've seen in 20 years. You think we trust the damn company? We trusted you. We've been dealing with you for almost a year. You knew our systems better than our own reps. Who the hell are we supposed to call now?" My heart pounded. I wanted to say, "Nobody," but I held back. "I don't know who they'll put on the account," I said carefully. "But if it's not someone you know, I wouldn't blame you for walking." He didn't respond right away, just sighed again. "This contract isn't signed. That was going to happen today. But now, hell, I'm pulling it. We don't do business with companies that play games. If you're not part of it, neither are we." I thanked him, hung up, and stared at the message thread between us for a long time. There it was. The thing Charles had bet on, this deal being in the bag, wasn't true. Henderson was out, and the company was about to learn that firing me came with consequences. But it didn't feel like victory. Not yet. The next few days passed in a haze. I didn't sleep much. I kept running it all over in my head. 9 years of loyalty, erased because I'd made myself too valuable to one man's ego. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about me. Charles hadn't just made a personal decision. He made a tactical one. He saw someone who'd built client relationships he couldn't replicate, and instead of respecting it, he treated it like a threat. That's when the idea hit me. I wasn't done selling, I wasn't done winning, but I sure as hell was done doing it for someone else. I spent the next 2 weeks doing what I did best, building relationships, one call at a time. But this time, I wasn't building them for someone else's bottom line. I was laying the groundwork for something of my own. The idea had taken root almost as soon as I left that parking garage, a boutique sales consultancy. Just me, at first. No hierarchy, no Charles, no soulless jargon, just trust, delivery, and straight-shooter communication. The stuff that still mattered when the smoke cleared. Frank from Henderson was the first to commit. Not just with support, but with money. "You start your own shop," he'd said. "We'll be your first client. No contracts needed. Just tell us where to send the check." I didn't even have an LLC yet when he said that. I had nothing but a laptop, a personal phone, and a deep reservoir of hard-earned goodwill. But the calls kept coming. People I'd worked with over the years, clients, old co-workers, even a few competitors, heard what happened. Some through whispers, some directly from me. And the thing is, the story spread. People love a good screw-over story, especially when it ends with the underdog swinging back. A few clients Charles had reassigned reached out just to say they were considering pulling their contracts too. One told me the new rep didn't know the difference between gross margin and net profit. Another said, "Adam, without you, it's just a name on a building. That's not worth 7 figures." I didn't gloat, not yet, but I wasn't above letting the silence speak for itself. I set up a small home office in my spare bedroom. Bought a whiteboard, a used desk from Craigslist, and a refurbished printer that made a sound like it was coughing every time I used it. It was humble, but it was mine. I filed paperwork with the state, opened a business account, got a logo made by a friend's kid in design school. Scrappy, but real. I called it Rowe Strategies. Not fancy, not flashy, just my name, and the one thing I knew how to do better than anyone: close deals the right way. A month later, I had 5 clients. Frank had followed through with Henderson's full contract, and I'd landed 2 more mid-sized logistics companies from my old network. I wasn't pulling in my old salary yet, but I was getting close, and I didn't need permission from anyone to move forward. No performance reviews, no surprise terminations, no Charles Dane breathing down my neck with a PowerPoint about synergy. Just honest business with people who respected what I brought to the table. Then, about 6 weeks after I was fired, I got a text. Blocked number, just 1 line. "We need to talk. Call me. Charles." I stared at the message for a long minute, thumb hovering over the screen. The part of me still angry wanted to delete it on the spot. But the sharper part, the part that had survived in sales all these years, knew better. You don't throw away leverage. You listen. And if you play it right, you let them twist a little before you give them the courtesy of your voice. I called back the next morning. Let it ring 4 times before I answered, just to let the tension build. "This is Adam," I said, flat. There was a pause, like he didn't expect me to actually pick up. Then came Charles's voice, strained but measured. "Adam, appreciate you calling back." "Didn't say I appreciated the text," I replied. I could almost hear him swallow. "Look," he started, "I think we got off on the wrong foot." I laughed, dry and sharp. "You mean when you blindsided me while I was closing $1 million deal for your company? That wrong foot?" He didn't respond for a second. Then, "I made a decision based on the information I had at the time. I'll admit it didn't play out how I expected." That was the closest thing to an apology I was ever going to get from a guy like him. "I'm calling because Henderson backed out," he said finally. "Frank won't return our calls. They said they'd moved on, but we both know that means they moved to you. And I've heard rumors you're working with other former clients." "I'm not going to confirm or deny anything," I said coolly, "but I will say I've been busy." He cleared his throat. "We may have acted prematurely in letting you go. I'm calling to see if there's a path to bring you back in a leadership capacity. Build your own team, competitive comp package, autonomy. You'd report directly to the CEO." I almost laughed out loud. The same man who couldn't stand not being in control was now offering me leadership, autonomy, and direct access to the top. But this wasn't about opportunity. This was about damage control. He'd made a power play, and it backfired. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving without them. And that scared him. "Charles," I said, "you didn't fire me because of performance. You fired me because I had too much client loyalty. You saw that as a risk. Now it's your weakness. That's not something you fix with a job offer." He was quiet for a moment. Then he tried again. "Let's talk numbers. If it's about compensation—" "It's not," I cut in. "It's about trust. And you already showed me how much that's worth to you." Another pause, longer this time. Then he said quietly, "So that's it?" "That's it," I said. "Take care, Charles." I hung up. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone's employee. I felt like my own man. 6 months later, I was working out of a modest co-working space across town, sunlight pouring through wide windows, a decent cup of coffee on my desk, and a team of 3 under me. I'd hired 2 people I'd once mentored, and one from a competitor who'd heard through the grapevine what I was building. We weren't trying to be flashy. We just wanted to do right by our clients, and it was working. Word kept spreading. One company referred another. People remembered how I made them feel. Trusted. Heard. Not closed, but served. Frank dropped me a note in the mail a few weeks ago, handwritten. Said, "Best business decision we ever made was walking when you did." They never got it. You do. It's framed now, sitting right next to the first invoice I ever sent out under the Rowe Strategies name. Not because of the money, but because that piece of paper proved something. I didn't need a title to make an impact. I didn't need permission to lead. I just needed the right moment to bet on myself. Sometimes I think back to that conference room. That moment when I had one foot in $1 million deal and another in the end of my career. At least the career I thought I wanted. It could have gone another way. I could have begged. I could have tried to fix it. But I didn't. I let it end. And because I let it end, something better began. I heard through the grapevine that Charles didn't last much longer. Apparently, 3 more clients pulled out after Henderson, and internal pressure mounted. He resigned quietly. No big goodbye, no press release. Just gone. Someone else slid into his spot with a softer voice and a longer fuse. I didn't care enough to celebrate. I'd already moved on. Now I wake up without a pit in my stomach. My name's on the door, my reputation's intact, and I answer to no one but the people I choose to serve. I spend my weekends with my wife again. I made it to my kids' baseball game last week. For the whole game, not just the final inning. My phone still rings. But now it's opportunity, not obligation. Funny thing is, getting fired was the most respectful thing Charles ever did for me. He cut the cord I was too loyal to untie myself, and it forced me to stop waiting for someone else to see my value. I see it now, and so does everyone else who matters. So no, I didn't lose that $1 million deal. I just took it with me. And then I built something bigger.